Sup nerds, I'm Tom. Today we're going to talk about Embarcadero. This is a medium weight Euro game from Renegade, or maybe more like medium plus a little bit. It's got this really cool 3D factor to it, so that's kind of like the gimmick, but at its core it's really simple in terms of the rules. The only real complexity kind of comes from there's just like a lot of symbology in the game, but let's dive into it. So the game takes place over 3 rounds. Every round, every player is going to get 5 turns, so you know there's going to be 15 turns.
Quick maths.
And every turn, you're either going to play a card or burn a card for resources. So you start with 5 cards in your hand, and every turn you're either going to play a ship, which goes out on the board, play a building, which essentially builds up on top of ships that are already out there, or you can scrap a card to gain some resources, money, some of those little 3D building pieces and stuff. And it actually does happen a lot more than you think. And then at the end of your turn, you always buy another card from the market, which means if you start with 5 and you play one and then you buy one, that means you'll always have 5 cards in your hand, right? Wrong! Because at the end of your turn, you always take a card from your hand, could be the one you just bought, it doesn't have to be, and you always place it on your player board, sort of saving it for next round. And the kind of nice part of that is that you can always tell like what turn it is and how many turns you have left in the round and in the game, right? Especially like if somebody accidentally forgets to do the purchase of a card, which kind of happens a surprising amount, they can kind of look and say, wait, why do I only have 2 cards on my player board? Oh, duh, sorry, I forgot to purchase a card. Hang on, let me get this real quick before you go and do your thing. So it's really easy to tell where you are in the game. And actually, it does kind of put a little bit of pressure on you because you know there's only 15 turns. You really don't want to take a turn that isn't super useful. So if you go to scrap a card, you can always scrap a card for like 3 money and 2 building pieces, I think it is. Like there's a generic scrap that you can always do, but you're usually going to be looking through the cards and saying which one has a really good scrap ability because I like this card a lot, I probably can't afford to build it, so I might as well scrap it for something really good. And when you play these cards, their essential function is, again, pretty simple. There's just a decent amount of symbology, so there could be some analysis paralysis. So like ships are just generic pieces that you grab and you place onto the board. You can either place them next to a wharf, those like long dock pieces. That's sort of an area control thing. You'll get points at the end of the round for having, you know, the most control there. Or you can place directly next to another opponent, and then you'll get to advance along this track, which will give you little bonuses and, yes, points at the end of the round and at the end of the game. When you play buildings, you play those on top of ships, and they need to have those building pieces on them, so like those 3D pieces, which is kind of the gimmick of the game. If the building is going to be 3 pieces long, you need 3 consecutive building pieces, so you can place a flat cardboard piece of your color on top of them, and it balances and everything, and then you can start putting buildings on top of that. So like when you play a building card, that's essentially allowing you to place the cardboard piece. Those big 3D plastic pieces, you'd think that those are the buildings and those are structures or something. Like they're not really, so that it's a little bit clunky there. And there's some clunkiness that comes in with the idea of like, I'll place a building that's 3 squares long or 4 squares long, so that's the cardboard piece, and then I only put 1 structure on it. So if I want to build up on top of that one, I need to put more structures on it so that I can place another cardboard piece on top of it. And that's a lot of the scrapping is going to be so you can get those 3D pieces. So there is a slight amount of clunkiness there. So like I said, the core of the game is pretty straightforward, but you can get into analysis paralysis looking at all the different cards to buy. Do I need to get another boat? Do I need to get another building? Which building should I get? Maybe I should just get a card for the scrap ability. How much do these cards cost? Can I afford that? And, there is resources, like essentially ships are what give you the resources and buildings are what give you the points, right? And it's sort of in a 7 Wonder-ish way. When you play ships out, the ship cards will have resources on them, and you just need to be showing those resources. You don't really spend them. There are some more advanced resources that you get in form of tokens that you could spend, but by and large, it's going to be like a 7 Wonders type of thing if you just need to have it out there. And sometimes the building cost will require you to sink a ship, which it basically just means you put a little token over the resources showing on a card, so you no longer get those resources anymore. So there are a lot of things to think about. You can get into analysis paralysis. It's not a super long game, and I'm actually surprised at how well it played at 2 players. You'd think, especially because there's area control with the wharfs and stuff, that wouldn't really work, and it works better as a multiplayer game. It ultimately does work better as a multiplayer game, but the 2-player game was still surprisingly enjoyable, especially because there's so many other ways to get points. You could even just kind of ignore the wharfs if you really felt the need to. If you really feel like you're not going to win this fight, well, whatever, I'm not going to even worry about the wharf. I'm just going to place next to you, advance on the track, get points that way, place some bigger buildings if I can, that type of thing. And at the end of the day, there is a little bit of clunkiness, but that isn't even really my negative towards the game, is that it just doesn't feel too special. That building up is cool visually, but it can be really annoying. You're really worried about the table getting knocked over and those things falling down. And there is the idea of like, well, I'm going to place this building and then I place one structure on it, so now I need to finagle a way to place more structures on it. You don't really feel like you're building an engine. I mean, you gain all your resources and stuff, but that's not super great. The special player powers are pretty nice, but you kind of want to make sure that the cards don't synergize with the gold cards. There are some gold cards on the board that could say, whoever has the most purple cards will gain these points. Well, there could be a character that says, hey, your special endgame scoring thing is that you get 1 point per purple card. Well, now that player is double incentivized to win that goal, and it just, then the other players would have to say, well, do I want to play a purple card to try and win this gold card, or do I want to play green cards, to get my 1 point based on my scoring thing? It's best if those things don't match up. And I like the game. I enjoyed playing it. I just don't think I loved it. Like, it didn't really stand out to me. It was well designed, again, with a little bit of clunk. It looks nice and everything. And, it's one of those games that I kind of want to keep. I want to put it into my collection, but I think I know deep down it doesn't have a lot of staying power, and I won't necessarily choose it over other games. And it might end up leaving my collection, in a year or two. So maybe I'm not going to add it to my collection. One of my buddies I was playing it with, he really liked it, so I think I'm just going to give it to him. Now, I know that's not a glowing review, but every time we talk about a game, we always put a purchase link to that game in the description box down below, because when you click on that link and then you buy a copy of that game, we get a little bit of a cut. So if you think, well, even though Tom didn't love it, maybe I'll like it. I like the 3D factor. I like all the stuff he said, even if he said he didn't like it all that much. And again, I'm not saying I hated it. It was just good. And I can guarantee you that this game, as well as every other game, is going to be a lot more fun when played on your Game Topper tabletop. Now, I didn't actually play this one on my Game Topper because I didn't play this one at my place, and even though my Game Topper tabletop is portable, it's not exactly that portable. I can't exactly bring it to a restaurant. I'm going to put a link in the description box down below for Game Toppers. There's also going to be a button down there that says subscribe. If you subscribe to our channel, then you'll never be bored.